Boom. Think we're recording. Think we're streaming. I think we are about live. And I think we're good to go. All right. So, welcome everybody in the Board Game Club. If you're live here, probably not yet because it's a little late, or maybe you're watching this tomorrow or whatever. You know me as Bobby Fiorentino from the Board Game Club, and I have here, very excited, guy who never heard of me until yesterday or so. It is Jay Cormier. Jay
Hello,
Cormier.
that's me.
Cormier.
I like it.
Game designer. Yeah. And Jay, you are. I think I first heard your name from Junk Art, right?
Oh,
You're a
fantastic.
Junk Art
That's
guy,
me.
and
I'm one of them. My
you're
buddy
Junk
Sen
Art.
Fung Lim co-designed it with me.
Yeah, you guys have like a almost like a superhero kind of thing, like you're like what, the Bamboozle Brothers or
Nice.
something like that.
It's so funny that people know us by that name. I mean, that's the name of our website that we go by, bamboozlebrothers.com, but we don't call ourselves that in public, but it's funny other people do.
Gotcha. It just like sort of stuck.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Okay. So, and it's not just junk art, but that's the one that I know because it's so
Sure.
iconic. There's not that many junk art kind of games. You know,
Right,
there's
right.
a million worker placements. There's not that many junk games. So that really stood out. And then I think I read an excerpt from your partner in a friend of the club here, Erin Dean. She had a book For the Love of Board Games that was on Kickstarter recently.
Yeah.
And and Erin's on here. What's up, Erin? Hey, Erin, let me know if you could hear. It's like she knew we were talking about her. Let me know if you could hear me okay. Let me know if you could see if there's any audio things because I am not good at
How
this
my
stuff.
how my
So
hair is.
how does Jay look? That's the most important thing. Let us know
Yeah.
if we should just focus on me. Let's just bam. Now we'll go back to the split screen. Yeah, so hopefully we get some feedback there. But yeah, so that's how I read about your process, and I'm not sure if that's how I found out about you have your site, or maybe I heard about you on a podcast. But I found your sales sheet. I signed up to your email newsletter to download
Yes.
your PDF on sales sheets. You have sound and look good. Jay's hair is great. That's what Erin Dean says. So there
Thank
you
you.
go.
Great.
Yeah, I feel like we have a similar hair thing going on tonight.
Yes.
But so I found you had a really helpful PDF on sales sheets, which I never even heard of, and I read the whole thing, and I was like, oh wow, this is like a whole kind of like something that maybe not a lot of board game designers think about because they're so focused on like the nuts and bolts of mechanics and themes and blah blah blah,
Which is
and
great,
yeah, which is important.
obviously.
But there's these little sort of hacks like sales sheets and like your book, which you could talk about that are sort of like the business side, which I feel is
Yeah.
like a malnourished information side of the board game
It's
development
it's an
industry.
unfortunate stereotype that is largely true that a lot of board game designers aren't very comfortable with the sales and the business end and being pitching to publishers and being a salesy type person. And so yeah, there's not too many tools up for them. So definitely the sales sheet guide was a tool I thought would help people understand that this is something a lot of publishers do look for nowadays. And I go through how to make one. I give examples of ones that I made that just show you that they don't have to be amazing. If you look at it, they're not like, wow, these are professional. No, they're not professional. They just get the job done. They're functional and they help sell your game. And all the five that I give you for free in that PDF are games that ended up getting signed.
Cool. Yeah, I thought that was a really helpful thing, but for me, doing a Kickstarter, I'm not quite looking to pitch to publishers yet, but I see that that could be useful in the future for sure.
Of course, yeah.
So let's talk about your Kickstarter right now. Let me switch over to you if I could get to it.
Mm,
There we go. Let me see. Fail Faster, the playtesting journal. So this I found out about from, like I said, from signing up for your newsletter, and Fail Faster. So first of all, this is a kind of phrase that I like hear a lot for like entrepreneurship, right? That you don't want to like think that you have the perfect product and that you're just fall in love with your idea. And you could say the same thing about board games, and that instead you should kind of focus on failing faster. So can you talk about what the connection is there
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shadow side to the term fail faster, and it can be overused, especially in the business world, and it can be more of a cliche, and I don't like that part of it, where they don't really understand the full context of what it means. But I think it's perfect for board game designers because we all know that board game design is an iterative process where there's never been a time where a game has come out of somebody's head 100% fully perfect. And like, this is the best game. Here it is. It always needs playtesters. It always needs testing and figuring out what's going to happen, how's it going to be better. And so, since we know it will be iterative, that you will change it, let's do that as fast as possible. And that's kind of the joke or the gimmick of failing faster. You fail, you test it because you know it's not going to work, so that you can then succeed sooner and get your game to a better state faster. And this really came from a perspective of once I was talking to a designer, and he's like, okay, listen, I've got spreadsheets of all my cards and the balancing. I've been working on it for months, and I got it all figured out. What do you think I should do next? I'm like, well, what are your playtests saying? Like, how's that going for you? He's like, oh, I haven't printed it yet. I'm like, oh,
so it didn't even get to a prototype phase.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so that's step one. Play test it. Get it out sooner. Like, get it out of your head sooner. Start playing it as soon as possible before you spend billions of hours doing anything. Like, so many people want to make it look pretty or something. I'm like, that's the least important thing at the beginning. Just make it so you can try it. Even on, cue cards and markers. Just try it.
So do you think part of why people focus on these things that are sort of more fun and less useful is that there's like a bit of like a fear of failure? Like, they kind of want to focus on the things that are fun and that they know are safe, like doing art, doing mechanics solo, rather than putting it in front of people and people be like, this game sucks.
Yeah, I think it's two things like that. I think one is that this is your baby, right? This is like, I play it maybe by myself or maybe with my friends or whatever, and we all think it's a blast, it's a hoot, it's awesome. And so there's this whole idea of like, I don't want it to come back and just be criticized, because it's perfect as it is. So why would I want to put myself through that? And the other part of it, now I've lost my train of thought about why people don't like to play test or and fail. Yeah, I guess the term is people think that's a bad thing, and they don't understand that it's such a good thing. Like, I never feel bad after a playtest. I never feel like, oh, that bombed miserably. I'll say that the game bombed miserably. The game was terrible. I might say that, but I'm excited about now learning about the direction that this game's going to go. Because if you sit down with players, anybody that are playtesting your game, they spent time out of their day, their week to sit down and play your game, and you have to remember they probably and hopefully have the same goal that you have, hopefully, and that is they're all here to make this game better. Mm-hmm. That's why they're here. They want to help you make this game better. So, definitely respect those playtesters and like listen to them and figure out what they're trying to say.
Yeah, and you don't want to avoid negative feedback. I kind of think of it like avoiding going to the doctor. It's like, if you go to the doctor, maybe he'll tell you have a tumor, but the alternative is you don't know you have a tumor and like it just sits there, and you got to get it taken care of.
It's true. It's true. And I try to put a different spin on it when I talk to my game designer friends. Is I don't necessarily think of feedback as good or bad. Like, that's bad feedback. I think feedback is just feedback. It's just information. This is information. This is my observation. This is how I felt during this process. You take it and do what you want with it. That's the information, right? It's not bad. I mean, it might make you feel bad because you want everyone to go, yes, this is the best game I've ever played in my life. You want that. But, that's obviously doesn't happen very often.
So we'll talk about your book and some other questions I have about playtesting. But right there, I have a question, because I do ask a lot of people for feedback, and I don't know what to do when I disagree. And like, sometimes people get like almost offended if I don't like accept and immediately implement their suggestions. Especially like lately, I've been doing a lot of artwork, and so I'll show 3 different people artwork, and there's 3 different opinions, and then I'll show them a future one. They'll be like, "Oh, I told you should have done this," and I'll be like, what do you do when people?
Yeah.
Do you find people get like offended if you don't take their advice?
Maybe, but I don't want to sound callous, but in a way I don't care and that let me preface by saying that you're the game designer. You know, you're the one that's making decision. So part of it might be in how you're asking the questions. And if you're asking for solutions, then yeah, they might be like, I kind of gave you a good solution last week. Why did you try it? When instead you should be asking questions that try to identify the problems and let you, the game designer, figure out the solutions. That's a big difference between I think an amateur and a professional. Is a professional game designer will find ways to ask questions that identify the problems as opposed to say, what's wrong with it? How do I fix it? Like those aren't the kind of questions you ask, your playtesters. You say, how did you feel? What was broken? Where did you lose agency? Where were there meaningful actions kind of reduced for you? Where was the tension? Where wasn't the tension? Should there be more? You should be asking those questions to figure out how they felt and what were their experiences like.
Yeah, this it's funny. A lot of these questions I'm asking you, but I'm realizing I'm hearing echoes because you just came out on Gabe Barrett's podcast. Was that today or yesterday? Yeah. And we had this planned ahead of time, and then I actually just interviewed Gabe last week or so. So it's like hearing an echo chamber, but I could ask you specific questions for my situation. So
thank you.
If anyone wants more in depth than this interview, go check out Board Game Design Lab. Jay did a great interview there, went very in detail, and we're going to do some stuff here. But first, I want to talk about your book. So let me switch over to that. Let me try to get this on screen here, because it's a book. Oh wait, hold on. Oh, you got it in your hand. Okay. Yep. So it is a book, but it's more than a book, right? It's not like a reading book.
That's
it's
right.
A functional kind of thing.
That's right. It's a playtesting journal in which the core of the book is 36 different playtests. You can record up to 36 playtests in a book. That's the core of it, where it's a 2-page spread for one playtest. And it just breaks it down into components that'll help guide you to take the notes you need to take. And I really love what people like John Gilmore is saying about this journal, that it's great for all levels of game designers. It's great for new game designers to kind of guide them and like, oh, I didn't know I should take that note. Okay, I'll take for experienced game designers and professionals, because they're still important regardless of how experienced you are. You need this information, and it just kind of focuses you in to make sure you get that information. And they all have different reasons why they're important. Like, for example, yeah, sure, there's a space here where you can write your playtesters' names. That's doubly important. A, it's just good to know, but B, if the game gets published, then you're going to want to have a little thank you section in your rulebook to thank all your playtesters. And so if you have recorded them all, boom, you've got it all done. Otherwise, you're going to Facebook saying, hey, did anybody play this game? And you're trying to figure out and remember all the people that played your game so you can thank them. And that's a bit weird. It even has an opportunity here. It says to list them when you do in turn order. That's another thing that's interesting, because it helps you identify if there's a start or an end player advantage. Because there's a section here for all the different scores you have, different columns for all the different types of scoring you might have, including obviously total score. But that'll help identify, like, oh, there's a start player advantage in this game. Every time, like the majority of the times that people win, they're the start player. So that gives you something. It's all about looking at the data, getting the data in the right format so that you can assess it and make some decisions about your design in the future.
So is the idea that you have one book per game, or can you use this book for multiple projects?
Right. It's a great question. I think it's either is the answer, but I think it would be more interesting if it was used one journal per game, because it'll allow you to follow the progress of that game as you go, and it'll allow you to quickly flip back to other pages and go, oh yeah, that's what the rule was 3 tests ago. I want to put that back in. And if you have a bunch of games, that's just going to be a bit harder, and you might have to find a way to do some sort of indexing here to kind of find where all the tests for each game are. But I have an alpha version, which I don't have handy. I have an alpha version that I've been using for a year, and I currently use it the way where it's all my different games in one book. Just because I didn't know I was going to go to this format, and I didn't want to print a bunch of them, I guess, at the time for the alpha version. But so it works both ways.
And I'm trying to pull up the chat. It looks like it got stalled on the web, so I'm going to pull it up on my phone. Don't think I'm ignoring you here. But
okay.
There was, I remember on the podcast I listened to today, you have like some like little, almost like Easter eggs or like little like dice and little like
Oh,
helpful
there's
things.
definitely some tools. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can flip to any page and you can roll 2d6. You get a 2d6 result in the bottom corner. So it's a different. That's why it's 36 playtests, because it's how many dice
Are
solutions.
those are those dice balanced too? Are they?
Yeah, 36 pages. So you have
okay.
every roll.
Perfect.
So that's perfect. The back cover actually folds out, and it folds out because there's a scoreboard. So if you forgot a scoreboard for your playtest, it folds. And the reason why it folds out, and the alpha version didn't do this, but the reason why it folds out is because you can still take notes about this playtest and still use this as a scoreboard to track your score for your game. And I've seen people use this currently in my play design group because they're like, oh yeah, shoot, I forgot a scoreboard.
Nice.
So it's definitely useful. Yeah. Other things are there's a game, and the front cover folds out, and there's a game idea generator. This is for those times when you're lacking motivation and you want to create a game. You can roll 2d6, which again is included in this book, and you can choose a random mechanic, theme, and even a constraint. I've
So
come up with.
it's a little blurry here. Can you just read like a few
Yes.
of those?
Oh, like obviously all the mechanics and themes of, like aliens or animals or civilization themes, and then mechanics, auction, battle cards, rock, paper, scissors, and then constraints would be like make use of dice, but you never roll them. That's a constraint you have to put in your game.
Hmm.
Or use cards, but in a way you haven't seen before. Like, okay, what does that mean? So just different and unique ways to kind of come up with ideas for your game. Even has a little section here on the very first page where you can set 3 different goals for your game, whether it's like get it ready to pitch at Gen Con or whatever it is, and you can track your progress and how you're doing. And that's kind of one of the kind of neat little kind of gimmicks of the book is, but I think it's really great, especially for new designers, is I've gamified the process where I've identified like 10 behaviors, and if you perform any of these behaviors during your playtest, you can come to this and check and like kind of do a little progress bar and shade it in, saying, "Oh, I did that in this playtest. I did that in this playtest," and shade them in. And then once you get to any of these little colored badges, it means you kind of like a Boy Scout. You've flipped to the cover and you get to color in that badge on the front. If we hit a stretch goal, these will actually turn into stickers, so you can actually stick on some stickers showing that I did this, this, and this, and this. And then the idea would be that when you go from this journal to the next journal, this badge up here, you would count up all the badges you had from one journal, and you would put that in the next journal at the top. And it would be a cumulative thing as you go. And then some of the stickers will have levels that you can gain for however many badges you've had over time. So you can kind of level yourself up as a game designer. So it's a fun kind of way to stay motivated if that's something that appeals to you. Obviously, you don't have to use it. It's just one small part of the book, but that's just kind of a neat little thing.
Yeah, well, you certainly know your target market and the stuff that scratches our itch.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so
And there's
I put a
other...
link.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I put a link in the description, failfaster.ca/Kickstarter, right? That's right. Or you could just search Failfaster Kickstarter. And I was surprised. Failfaster was, I think the Kickstarter was like the first or second link. I thought it would, like I said, like that's an entrepreneurial kind of term. I thought that it would
Right.
bring me to some lean book or something like that. But no, it brought to you. So
Well,
that's
it's because
cool.
the campaign's so hot.
It's so hot right now. It is hot. Let me go
It is.
take a look at
It
it.
funded it day one. I was very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the page now. I got it on screen, and so I guess you got some crazy Canadian dollars here, so that might be a little not translate.
True.
But
True.
$5,000 goal ish. And it looks like you're at 8,000 now. And when did this start? Did this start like yesterday? This campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a pretty short campaign, right? 22 days or so, and 363 backers already. Almost looks like almost double your goal. And what's the basic? Around $13 US for the book.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And does that include shipping or actually shipping?
No, the shipping's at the bottom, but shipping's pretty tiny for U.S. citizens.
Gotcha. Was it subsidized shipping or I asked?
It is, yeah. I'm paying for the handling, and then you just pay for the shipping.
Cool. So this is definitely funded, so people will definitely get their journal, and this is pretty cheap. I thought it'd be like $20-$30 or something like that, but this is certainly reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in this to this isn't like a business venture where I'm like, here's my way of making $1 million. I'm like, I made a tool last year, and I've got it printed at Staples for I call it a convention. It's called JCon. It was literally like 20 people that came because it's all my local game design friends. And I thought it would just be a fun thing for them to come to my party because we were going to play test all day. That was my party, play test all day long. That if I provided them a little gift, I don't know why I thought that'd be cool. And the gift idea I came up with was this playtest journal. And so I made the alpha version of it and gave it out to everybody. And everyone just really liked it. And it blew me away. And people were like, this is a pretty cool idea, dude. Like, you should do something with this. And I think about that. Okay. And so I obviously decided to do something with it. Hired a graphic designer, got it made to look all nice. Took the last year worth of feedback of people using this journal and made it better. So iterated. I failed as fast as I could to get this journal made.
Is that the meta of playtesting, that you playtested your playtest journal?
It's true. It's
Inception.
true.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I see in the chat, Erin, real quick, she just had something to say. She just started a new job as playtest manager for Lucky Duck Games, and she's very excited to use your journal. She's already back.
Oh, that's fantastic! Is she happy? She must be playtesting some Kingdom Rush right now, I imagine.
I'm sure she's got plenty.
That's a new Kickstarter coming out soon. Yes, so exactly. That's designed by my buddy Sen and his buddy Jesse.
Oh, the other half of the Bash Brothers, Bamboozle Brothers. I already forgot what your superhero names are.
Bamboozle Brothers.
Bamboozle Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, would you mind if I ask you a few more playtesting questions that are maybe useful to only me, but that's okay because this is my group.
It is. If you don't mind, I just talk for 1 minute just because I think it's neat about how I'm doing the stretch goals on this campaign because it's pretty different than other campaigns. So instead of just like, hey, when we get to this mount, we get this, and on this mount, we get this, it's actually one where the backers get to decide which stretch goals they want to unlock. And so if you go to the page, you'll see where the stretch goal section is. There's a bunch of progress bars, much like the journal has progress bars for behaviors for playtesting. And as these things are accomplished, some of which the backers have control over, and some are just the progress of the campaign, we unlock badges. And as we unlock badges, we get to spend those badges. And so every time we unlock enough badges, we have a vote. And so we just had a vote for my first one last night, and they had to vote, do they want to spend 5 badges that they've earned to unlock the elastic stretch goal that keeps it kind of locked, closed when you're transporting it, or not. And currently, you're the first to hear this because it'll be in a couple hours, it'll go out as the final result. Unless things change drastically, there's 66% have voted to save the badges for another stretch goal.
Oh, okay. So it's almost like a currency that you're gamifying the stretch goals. I'm on the page now.
Yes.
It's showing up on screen. I see that you've shaded out the 7K in funding, 75% is shaded. Next up is 120%, 150 backers.
You got it.
And actually, you're over 300 now. So another one of these is going to be shaded.
My goal is every night around 10 or 11, I'm going to update that image. So not as we go because that's too crazy. That'll make me explode. But every night I'll update that.
Yeah, this is awesome. I've never seen a campaign like this, so it's fun. Good times.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun. I'll make a fun campaign.
Cool. All right. Well, let me tell you. Let me ask you my personal questions. My selfish reasons for doing this interview. So I'm running what could be considered what is a humble campaign. And the whole point of this is just get it out there. My partner and I just looking to not make $1 million, not get it in everybody's hands. We just want to get through the process, put together a good game, as good as we can make it, and then sort of iterate onto the next thing that'll be like a real thing. So with that in mind, I guess my first question is, before we even get to playtesting part of it, how good is good enough with this in mind? How good do games have to be? Because there are thousands of games coming out. I think there was 3,000 tabletop games on Kickstarter last year. I just saw
all you need is one of two things. You need a cool hook where people are like, oh, well, that's a neat way to do that, or that looks neat, has table presence. Or 2, you need minis. Those are the 2 things that'll guarantee success.
Cool minis or a cool hook.
Right? You need something that people kind of go like, oh, that's a new way of doing that, because it doesn't matter if it's a party game or a strategy game, whatever, but it needs something like, it just can't be another cube pusher. Well, cube pushers, mind you, still can do well, but as long as your game has something where it's a hook of something like that's cool, even if it's in the reviews where people are like, I've never seen a game like this before because blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's table presence. It's got like a volcano in the middle of the table. People are like, what's that for? That's cool.
That's funny that you mentioned that because my game is a disaster-themed game, and there is not a volcano in the game, but there is a hard volcano. So I'll write that down.
Now you have to actually make an actual. Yeah, that'll be a stretch goal.
Yeah,
comes with volcano.
Comes with a volcano.
Yeah.
So I've been using the group to kind of put out print and plays. Right, we have a Facebook group.
Oh,
with
nice.
About 4,000 people in it, but the bastards in this group are not playtesting as much as I'd like. So,
what?
Well, here's the thing. So you said
how much do you playtest of their games?
Like, I guess 0 would be, if I had to quantify it, I'd say 0.
So when you said bastards, it was all inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excluding myself from this. It's a tight knit group.
Yeah.
But you've got, like you said, you've got a good 20 people or so local, and I don't have a group like that. Like I have a few friends who.
But you can do prototype swaps. That happens all the time. We do that still even here.
Yeah, I've done
connect with someone.
I've done Unpub. I've been to 2 Unpub events.
Sure. But I just mean, like, if you have another connection with another designer or designer group or whatever, that you'd be like, hey, we've got 2 games from our group we want to send to you guys. If you have 2 games, we'll swap, we'll play test the heck out of them, and then, then there's obligation and kind of reciprocity that you kind of like, well, I got to test it. They're testing my game.
That's a good idea. Yeah. So what about getting, I guess, blind play testers, like people who owe you nothing, who want nothing from you? Because that's really the best feedback, right? How do you, and I'm thinking more for myself because I don't have this local group like we talked about, but I'm also thinking people who either might not have a group. Like we're talking about Gabe Barrett, he's in Honduras. I don't know if he's got play testers nearby, or like someone might just, be like socially anxious or something like that and might not want to ask people. I mean, I could see a lot of situations where someone would want to go online to get play testers, and how do you get them to actually do it? I got a few dozen people who downloaded and only a few few actual feedback forms. So I don't know if I'm bothering them enough.
It's all about. I think in this industry, the more you give out, and you're giving out with this by doing this podcast, that's something that you're doing to give to the community. So that's great. The more that you give, the more that you can receive. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but if somebody was like always like, who's playtesting, please playtest, and they're not doing much giving, it's too much. People don't like respond well to that. So I don't know. So as long as you've got a nice balance of like tit for tat, that's why I said the prototype swap is one of the best ways to do it. If you can find other groups, even through any other Facebook group that does playtesting, you kind of look through it and people are posting stuff. You're like, that looks like a cool game. And then just offer, just like, hey, you interested in doing a prototype swap? I'll mail you mine, you mail yours, and we'll play it for a couple of weeks and we'll give feedback.
Yeah, that's a good call. Really good tip.
Yeah. We have a group up here in Canada called the Game Artisans of Canada. And so we have chapters all across Canada. And we have a steward who's the main person for each chapter. We have members, and then we have apprentices that want to become members. And in order to become a member, an apprentice first has a mentor that they kind of partnered with to kind of guide them through the process. And then they have to get a game up to what we call a gamma level, where it's like kind of publisher ready. Like it's like, oh, that's pretty decent publisher ready, as deemed by your local chapter, and then we have to send that to another chapter, and they also have to say, yeah, it's gamma ready, and then they become a member. Wow. This is just something we did.
Yeah, you seem to find a way to gamify like every aspect of your life. It seems it's awesome.
That wasn't all me. That was kind of in place before I even got to the group. But yeah, that's it's a great process, and there's benefits of being a member, access to different things. Yeah. So anyways, that's our process up here in Canada.
Cool. Do you have any just generic advice for first-time designer? Like now, you know what our goal is, just to sort of get through the process, learn how Kickstarter works, learn the ins and outs of manufacturing, fulfillment, dealing with customers, and dealing with artwork, and the finance aspect of it. Like just really just want to get through it and build a bit of a following to parlay in the future.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
With that in mind, what kind of generic advice would you give?
I'll start by prefacing by saying that my Fail Faster journal is the first time I've run a Kickstarter campaign myself, so I'm in the same boat as far as like figuring it all out. That said, I've had about, I can't remember what it is, about 6 or 7 of my games go on Kickstarter, but run by the publisher. So the most recent one being In the Hall of the Mountain King. I'm not sure if you saw that one out there, but that one just funded a couple weeks ago at like 280,000. And
Nice.
I would recommend checking out that campaign for an example of a well-run campaign, or any campaign that the company Roxley runs, Dice Throne or Santorini, and just see how they run it and see how that they engage with their customers. Small tips like thanking and messaging every single backer with a message, a personalized, individual, different message, and saying, "Hey, Steve, thank you so much for backing my game. This is really awesome." And maybe commenting about something about their picture. I don't know, whatever it is, just kind of creating a community and
reach out and touch them.
Yeah, and then obviously in the comment section, everything is positive, everything is listening, and just like when you're playtesting, when somebody gives you feedback, you can't be defensive. You can't be like, we tried that. It's got to be like, you have to welcome every comment. Like, that's a great idea, even if it's not a great idea. You have to be like, accept it, so that people are like, he's listening, they're listening to me. And you, again, as a designer, as the publisher, you get to decide ultimately what happens, but you have to show that you're listening and make sure people understand that. I mean, there's got to be limits. You're running it, so you're not going to give. I'm not saying agree with what everyone's saying and do what everyone's saying, because you obviously are the business person. You have to make decisions, but you can say that in a way that educates them as opposed to shuts them down. Mm-hmm. Other tips, obviously, is reading every single post from Jamie Stegmaier's blog about running Kickstarter. It's like hundreds of posts. I read through every single one of them because they are so good. He's the man. He knows everything. It's great.
His book too.
Those are indispensable
Crowdfunder.
tools. Yes.
Yeah. And James Matthews' blog also highly recommended. So just got to do your
the
homework.
ins and outs. Because then it gives you like some timelines of like, oh, do this at this point, do this at this point. Those kind of things are really important. And then just making sure. I mean, hopefully you've backed a bunch of projects already and a bunch of games, so you understand what some good examples of campaigns are and what some not so good examples of campaigns, and you can at least tailor and become some of the good people, good publishers. But it's really about making it fun and engaging and having a fun kind of time with it and being responsive. And I've seen some campaigns where people are like, nobody's responded to this comment for like 3 days. What's going on? So that's frustrating.
Follow the fun. That was advice you gave in Board Game Design Lab podcast.
Yes.
Wow,
look at you.
That was a
you
fun
were paying
little,
attention.
yeah. It's those little takeaways that are the good parts.
Nice.
So I guess the last thing I wanted to ask. So are you full-time game designer, or is this a side gig for you?
About 3 years ago, I went down to part-time at my job. Mm-hmm. And they were fortunate. I asked 4 years ago, and they said no. That's because I had like an office job, and they're like, nobody does that. You can't do that. And then a year passed, and they're like, "Are you still interested in doing that?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, we can do it now." I'm like, "Great." And so that meant I worked 3 days at that job and 2 days doing game design, plus every night and weekends.
Right.
But I have 2 full days at home working on game design, and it's awesome. It's my 2 favorite days of the week.
So what does that look like? Because I think a lot of people would like to get to that point where they're either part-time, not just hobby, but like actually devoting time, either full-time or whatever.
Well, I'm going after it hard, trying to make it a full-time job.
And so what is that, I guess, do you have to luck into having the right game, or is it enough perseverance, or is it just like your sort of family setup? Like, what do you think from the game designers how can someone get there? Is it possible, or is it just has to be like the exact right circumstances?
It's a bit of column A, a bit of column B. Obviously, if you make that game, that's all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's an awesome game, and we're going to be printing this forever because everyone's always going to want The Mind or whatever game is that's going to be around for a long time from now on. Code names, like, okay, yeah, Vlada, that's your gold now. I don't know if he was. I'm pretty sure he was, a full-time game designer before that with all his other games and everything. But I think like now he's set. That's his game. So yes, if you can find and make that game, great. That's definitely what we need. Otherwise, you have to be a person that people want to work with. And a lot of people don't really get this part of it. And especially new designers, where they maybe get that chance where they actually are in a position where they're negotiating a contract for the first time for their board game, and they're so excited, and they get caught up in the legalities of the contract, and if they demonstrate that they're going to be fighting all the time, it can fizzle out, or you just will get known as somebody who's like very tough to work with. Like if you're demanding things and like you cannot change the theme, it must be unicorns and ponies. It has to be that. I can't like all. And if you do too many demands, you could be thought of as a problem to work with. That's not to say that you shouldn't stand up for yourself and make sure you're not being taken advantage of and make sure you're fair. But those are requests, and it's how you word it and it's how you come across. And I think Sen and I have gotten known in the industry from the publishers as two really easygoing people that are just great to work with, and we're always collaborative, and we're always open to pretty much anything, almost anything. I don't know if there's been anything where we're like, no. I think the only thing I fought for recently was when I was about to sign for In the Hall of the Mountain King. There was some weird clause in there where the publisher wanted to retain the name even if they didn't end up funding or even making the game. And I had to kind of fight for that. I'm like, that's kind of weird, because I don't want to then pitch this game to somebody else if it falls through and I get to pick the rights back, but I don't have the name. Yeah, that's kind of the point of the game. So we had to kind of talk about that. But I just shared my side of it, my thought. I'm like, this is weird to me that I've never seen it before, and blah blah blah. And she had her points, and we came to an agreement, and it was all great. But usually, it's like, for sure, my themes have been changed, rules have been tweaked. I'm pretty open to it. I'll definitely ask questions about, like, oh, that's interesting. Why did you change that rule? And have conversations. And I might even give opinions of like, well, and this is different than playtesting feedback where you just listen and accept all this. When you're like negotiating with a publisher and they're telling you about rail changes, you can actually defend it and you can be defensive to a certain point, but in a positive and productive way of like, oh, that's interesting. When we tried something similar to that, we found that players kind of went this way and then they ignored this whole section. So that's a danger if we do that. And that came up a few times, even in the Hall of Mountain King, when they came up with some ideas, and they were very, very receptive. They're like, oh, that's a good point. We never thought of that. So let's maybe try this other way then. So it's, as long, if you're shown as being very collaborative, that's a big thing and a very positive. You want to be a positive person, a positive force, and even doing things like you're doing, like contributing to the community and the industry by doing things like podcasts. Those are seen as being very positive things.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, you see the same people like we talked about, Jamie Stegmaier, James Matthey, a lot of the guys who run like Board Game Spotlight, you see them all over the place, and it definitely has an effect on the games they sell and how much exposure they have and that sort of thing. So one thing I've noticed is that it seems like there's almost like no competitors. Like everybody just kind of like works, not like necessarily works together, but it's not like it's the opposite of zero sum, whatever that is.
It's so true. Everyone is so helpful in the industry. Everyone's always helping each other. It's so great. I don't know any other industry that's really like this, where we're all like, oh, sure, I'll help you out. I'll do this. I'll help. Yeah, you can come at my booth. And like all these like things that people are doing that I'm like, wow, that would not happen in any other competitive industry. This is great.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the people like you that are willing to come on and chat with me and, give some advice and
I think generally most people that have been around in the industry long enough understand that board games works different than any other media, in that the more people that you can introduce to gaming, the more people that will be gamers, the more people that will buy and experience other games. And so it's just a slow snowball and like obviously now there's way more people playing board games than there were 10 years ago. Way more. Mm-hmm. Like it's grown so much. And just imagine in 10 years how many more people are playing board games. So it's still a market that's growing. We've seen double-digit sales increases year over year for the last 6 years in a row in board games. So it's like it's still growing as much as people say. There's thousands of games coming every year. I'm like, yeah, but there's still appetites for it. Like people are still making money off of these games and wanting these games.
Yeah. And I mean, I've found that just buying games is a hobby, like much less playing them, but just like collecting them and people back Kickstarter as a hobby. And so, that's great for the industry.
It is.
Well, it's getting pretty late here. I don't want to keep you too long. So let me just give you one last plug, failfaster.ca/Kickstarter. That's in the description, and you can just search it. Anything else? Give you the last word.
No, I mean, if you are interested in either becoming a designer and you've always thought about it, or you are an early designer, or you are an experienced designer, I think checking out this book, at the very least, checking out, there's a free print and play where you can even just try it on the campaign page. I think it's going to help you create better habits and make you a better play tester of your games, and ultimately a better designer.
Yes, well, I'll be backing it very shortly, so I'm excited. It's funded, so I'll get to jump in on these votes and figure out what to do with these badges. So that'll
Cool.
be exciting.
Thanks.
Cool. All right, Jay, thanks so much. And everyone watching this, there'll be a replay, and we'll throw it up on YouTube just in case you missed the beginning. And thanks again.